This is the story of the largest mass murder in world history. In the known universe, for all we know. And these unassuming rocks are the most powerful pieces of forensic evidence the planet has ever seen. They convict, beyond a reasonable doubt, the killer of almost all life on Earth. 96% of everything in the oceans. 70% or more of everything on land. At a time full of bizarre and wondrous creatures.
Sometimes a whole bunch of things go away all at once. That's what we call a mass extinction. And mass extinctions beg questions.
It's called the Permian extinction, or the Great Dying. And it's by far the worst of the 5 major mass extinctions in our fossil record.
Everything seems to die out in a very, very short period of time.
And only recently have scientists found the smoking gun. A really smoky smoking gun that brought it all crashing down. The story of life on Earth is an epic saga of evolution and extinction. Turn back the clock several 100 million years, and we find many bizarre life forms thriving beneath vast ancient seas. But massive shifts in the Earth's crust and a series of mysterious catastrophes soon produced the first 2 of 5 major mass extinction events that wipe out more than 75% of all life on our planet. By the start of the Permian period, another massive change is taking shape. One that will finally allow life to thrive on land.
In the Permian, the continents have all come together to form this gigantic supercontinent called Pangaea. You could basically walk from Cape Town to Beijing to Boston, you know?
Initially, most of the magic in the Permian isn't on land. Pangaea is surrounded by a single super ocean. Panthalassa. And though much of its depths remain a mystery, where the continental shelf creates shallows, fossils reveal a world where life runs riot. Reefs have finally recovered from the previous mass extinction that ended in the Devonian period. Coral and sponges are flourishing, as are nautilus-type creatures called ammonites.
You would have just loved scuba diving in the Permian. There's corals, there's cephalopods. You still have trilobites that evolved back 540 million years ago.
The lobed-finned fish that gave rise to us landlubbers have disappeared. From the seas, at least. They've walked onto land and into an amphibious lifestyle, like Tiktaalik. But new bony fish, rays and sharks thrive. One almost unbelievable creature, the helicobrian, swims in search of prey, a shark with a circular saw of a mouth.
It basically had this whirl of teeth mounted in its lower jaw, and it would slam into its upper jaw, and it was a slicing mechanism. It swam around in the sea and just chopped stuff in half, and then came back and ate it.
One of the latest saw blade fossils found, called a tooth whorl, points to a creature that grew to 40 feet. It may be devoid of sea monsters, but on land, the cool, dry continent of Pangaea breeds life of its own.
All the continents are together, right? And so what happens is that in the coastal part of the world, you have these swamps, And in the middle of Pangaea, because it's so far from the sea, it becomes quite dry. And so reptiles are favored because they seal in their body fluids, they lay their eggs on land, they bury them.
It'll be 100 million years before the first true mammals appear. But their surprisingly reptilian-like ancestors, like these pelycosaurs, with their flamboyant sails, have already begun to strut their stuff.
What you've got are animals that look like a big iguana with a great big sail on its back. It's likely that these sails were for either impressing the other sex or for moderating heat.
Placid plant eaters like dicynodonts rip through vegetation across Pangaea with bony beaks. They come in dozens of species, from the size of rats to rhinos. But no doubt, many are on the meal plan for some of the day's largest predators. Like the world's first saber-toothed carnivore, the voracious gorgonopsid, and Titanophonius, or Titanic murderer, at 15 feet long, one of the largest predators of its day.
And so you had a food chain there, plants, herbivores, predators, all living in the Permian in relatively warm conditions on the globe at that time.
Like their prey, these monsters were incredibly successful until they weren't.
$250 million years ago is the major mass extinction of all time, when you lose about 96% of the species of life on land, in the sea, animals, plants, forests. Everything seems to die out, again, in a very short period of time.
The evidence for the great dying is rock solid. The fossil-rich layers of the Permian, chock full of ammonites, snails, and clams, end abruptly some 250 million years ago. Above, for millions of years, lie black, blank shale, a sign of empty, dead oceans. The cause of the dying has been a bit more controversial.
And some people think that there was an impact of an asteroid or comet at that time. Some people think that it was volcanic eruptions that caused the climate to change. Other people think that it might be more mundane things like sea level changing.
Then, beginning in around 2008, things started to come into clearer focus. In a place called the Siberian Traps in modern-day Russia. That's where our infamous rocks come in. The result of perhaps the most devastating volcanic event ever. Where over 700,000 cubic miles of lava flowed from the center of the Earth. Enough to fill the Grand Canyon 7 times.
Tremendous amounts of lava coming out of fissures and cracks in the Earth and spreading across a very wide area, forming this huge plateau, thousands of feet thick, one lava flow on top of another. It may be in as short as 100,000 years or even less than that.
Scientists already knew that these massive eruptions occurred around the time of the Great Dying, but have only recently pinpointed the dates.
It's interesting, we know the time of the extinction event very accurately because there are volcanic ash layers right at the time of the mass extinction. Those have been dated very carefully, 252 million years ago. And the date of the Siberian basalts turns out to be 252 million years. So could it just be a coincidence But the biggest mass extinction happened at the same time as this huge outpouring of lava, which doesn't happen for tens of millions of years between events. I think it's too good to just be a coincidence.
It's more like a smoking gun.
Smoking gun. That one's easy. There's no evidence for any other trigger for this mass extinction. The dates line up, the volume of volcanic rock lines up with something. If you have that much volcanic rock coming out, there's going to be a problem.
And the rocks themselves also hold clues as to just how bad it was. Trapped inside are bubbles of gas from the eruption, traces of the trillions of tons of carbon dioxide that got belched out of the molten heart of the Earth and into the atmosphere.
If you put more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it's a greenhouse gas. It warms the atmosphere, but it also causes the seas to become more acidic.
And that is going to make it very difficult for a creature that depends on calcite to make their shell, because that will dissolve in low pH systems.
It was a complete horror show. 90% of all life wiped out. Nearly a factory reset for the Earth.
The world was not a pleasant place at that time, no.
So there were a lot of losers in the Permian-Triassic extinction. I mean, basically a lot of our friends that have been with us for the entire Paleozoic, things like trilobites, the last trilobite goes. Lots of these earlier marine organisms that they've survived through much of the earlier extinctions can make it through.
But as always, life finds a way. Lots of major groups still survived. Cephalopods, reptiles, certain fishes, and trees all managed to survive the Great Dying. And the world they inherit is a very different place.
It was a bad time, but thank goodness for the Permian extinction, because otherwise we wouldn't be here. I don't think we'd be able to compete with some of the things that were happily living there beforehand.
In the next era, the Triassic, reptiles will expand their dominion to rule the air, sea, and land, along with the first true mammals. And for that, we should all be very grateful. We tend to think of the animals of the Cretaceous and Jurassic. Movie star dinos like T-Rex, Velociraptor, Stegosaurus. But these creatures wouldn't have had a single cameo were it not for their forebears in the Triassic. When the first dinosaurs, plesiosaurs and pterosaurs, really cool ones, like this Eudimorphodon, first appeared on planet Earth. The remarkable reptiles that took over the world during the Triassic hung on by the skin of their terrifying teeth near its end to give us the glorious giants to come. It begins 250 million years ago, in the aftermath of the Permian extinction, when violent volcanism nearly wiped out all life from the face of our planet.
The Permian-Triassic extinction was the mother of all extinctions.
Life was back down to some of the simplest forms, and it took millions of years for it to recover.
Until very recently, we thought the devastation was so complete that little stirred on the charred Earth for the first 10 million years of the Triassic. But But in 1998, scientists found this amazing creature. T-Sarophagus, in the fossil layers just above the Permian extinction. The size of a school bus, this dolphin-shaped reptile took to the seas in as little as 8 million years after the Permian disaster. As soon as the oceans began to take up oxygen again. It's a sign of things to come.
Triassic is a time of tremendous innovation because the decks had been cleared so severely in the Permian Triassic. So you basically wipe the slate, not clean, but pretty clean.
All the niches are open, all the ways of living, of making a living are there, and so it's like free lunch.
If we spin the Earth back 247 million years to 5 million years after the Permian disaster, the subsiding smoke reveals a single supercontinent called Pangaea, surrounded by a single mega ocean called Panthalassa. T-Sarophagus hunts squid and bony fish here. As modern reef-forming corals and communities finally start flourishing and repopulating the seas. Ammonites, nearly wiped out, begin to proliferate and diversify. Sea urchins and sea stars appear for the first time.
We had Pangaea, and everything was great on Pangaea for a long time. We had coral reefs that seemed to be doing okay, and just sort of a nice, hot, humid, high oxygen environment.
On land, lumbering, heavy armored herbivores thrive in lush conifer forests.
My favorite terrestrial organisms in the Triassic are the animals called iodosaurs. They look like a big crocodile-sized lizard, but they have armored plates that look like football pads that are down the length of them. But their mouths are tiny and their teeth are tiny. So you have this animal that's armored itself up so it can walk around and nibble on vegetation. So they're all dressed up and no place to go.
That armor comes in handy in the Triassic. When fending off speedy, agile predators like Coelophysis, one of the earliest known dinosaurs. It seems to hunt in wolf-like packs, picking off young.
Coelophysis is cool. It's first discovered in Ghost Ranch in New Mexico, and they didn't find just one, they found a bone bed of dozens of them.
The first pterosaurs, like Eudimorphodon, first take to the air in the Triassic. Though how they manage it, no one knows. Whether by air, land, or sea, by the end of the Triassic, around 200 million years ago, life has radiated and repopulated the entire Earth.
You had all these places to colonize, and then there was room to kind of make your place and put your roots down, literally or figuratively, and evolve and diversify. And they did.
By the end of the Triassic, you've evolved the first dinosaurs, you've evolved the first mammals, and you start to see the hint of the modern world.
But all good things must come to an end. And what happened then was the breakup of Pangaea.
Toward the end of the Triassic, the same forces that crashed all the continents together are now conspiring to tear them apart. A rip in the fabric of our Earth pulls North America from Africa and Europe.
So we find lava flows in New Jersey. We also find lava flows on the other side in Morocco. So Morocco and New Jersey were right next to each other, and that was one of the centers of these eruptions.
Coming between them, a new body of water the Atlantic Ocean.
What I love is the fact that one day there was no Atlantic Ocean, and then some few years later, it was a narrow canal, and then you could jump across it, and then you couldn't jump across it.
Then, in a matter of just 40,000 years, the blink of an eye in geologic time, all hell breaks loose. Earth entered yet another period of extreme volcanism, spewing out its guts in waves of lava and gases. The larger creatures of the Triassic can run, swim, and fly faster than the violently widening new sea. But they can't hide. The sudden release of carbon dioxide, sulfur, and methane creates runaway global warming, acid rain, and acidic oceans. Critical plants and animals at the bottom of the food chain die off, and the system collapses. 75% of all species fade into the fossil record, the world's fourth mass extinction.
So they were hit in the Permian, they're beginning to recover, they're recovering in the Triassic, and bam, they're hit again.
But like all the previous mass extinctions, not everything is hit.
The dinosaurs survive, the mammals survive, the turtles survive, the parasaurs survive. So on land you have these lineages now that are often racing.
Just under the scorched earth, some tiny, shrew-like creatures with their live-born young hunker down. These first mammals, like Megazostrodon, measured in ounces and inches, seem unlikely to inherit the Earth. First, they'll have to survive yet another age under the feet of giant reptiles. Because the ones who managed to survive through the Triassic extinction are about to give rise to the most terrifying ancient creatures of all. It's the most famous line of mud in the world. Found in some 300 places all over the planet. From Gubbio, here in Italy, where it was discovered, to the Hell Creek Formation in North Dakota, to the deserts of western China. Like the many other geological layers deposited through the ages, it is not just a sediment line, it's a timeline. Only this one was laid down some 66 million years ago. And that makes it particularly special.
It was like somebody dropped a newspaper in a fossil site 66 million years ago, and all you had to do was read the date off the newspaper. We can look below it and see what life was like before, and look above it and see what life was like after.
Below, ancient sediments are full of dinosaur fossils. Tyrannosaurus to Triceratops, and everything in between. Above, in more recent layers, not a single dinosaur has been found.
Something happened, very abrupt, which wiped out about 75% of the forms of life on the planet and every dinosaur.
It's the fifth mass extinction to strike our planet, and it takes out some of the most magnificent and terrifying creatures in the history of ancient Earth. The geological evidence found in 66-million-year-old rock across the planet tells a dark tale of worldwide wildfires, choking sulfurous air, and scalding acid rain. But dip further into history, back some 145 million years, to the beginning of the Cretaceous period, and our Earth is now starting to look positively modern.
The continents are moving apart. The Atlantic Ocean is opening up. The climate is rather benign during the Cretaceous. You have sea level very, very high, covering over large portions of the continents with interior seas.
There are vast conifer forests and vibrant flowering plants.
If you actually landed in the Cretaceous period, let's say sometime around 100 million years ago, and started walking around, you might not feel too out of place. You might see a snake and a turtle and a tree and flower, but this is also an ecosystem in a world dominated by giant dinosaurs.
Herds of long-necked herbivores graze on an endless supply of vegetation.
The biggest land animals that have ever lived, these gigantic sauropods, some of them as much as 100 feet long, 20 feet tall, up to 88 tons. These massive, incredible animals.
Flashy crested Parasaurolophus trumpets its booming love songs through its magnificent headgear.
So the herbivores get bigger, there's plenty of vegetation to feed on.
And with ever larger creatures feeding on plants, come the animals that feed on other animals.
There's an arms race. The meat eaters get bigger and bigger, and so you get larger and larger dinosaurs.
The pteropods, like the bipedal, tiny-handed terror T-Rex, famously take the role of top predator on land. While the pterosaurs, the largest animals ever to fly, dominate the air. One of the largest, Quetzalcoatlus, has the wingspan of an F-16 fighter and can glide the width of the continent in a single flight. The oceans have their own set of predators, like the long-necked Plesiosaurus. But by the end of the Cretaceous, their dominion has been challenged in spectacular fashion by the terrifying Mosasaurus, 50 feet of hungry lizard, 20 feet longer than T-Rex. But all of these outrageous displays of reptilian drama are doomed. A rock 6 miles in diameter and moving at some 45,000 miles an hour is about to cross paths with the Earth.
Moving at hypervelocity speeds, like 7 times. Suddenly, in an instant, a blinding light, and you're dead.
A comet explodes with the energy of 1 billion Hiroshima bombs.
1 billion going off at the same time in the same place.
Vaporizing miles of the Earth's crust and ejecting the superheated wreckage miles into the air.
Air temperatures locally got to about 300 to 500 degrees Celsius, so you probably would have been vaporized immediately if you were in the immediate vicinity.
Animals lucky enough to be out of the blast zone are on the wing and on the run. In vain, as that flaming toxic debris rains back onto Earth.
As it rains back in, it heats up because it heats on re-entry, and the sky gets hot. The heat from the sky makes it to the ground and starts fires. So no matter where you are on Earth, within hours, you are feeling some serious hurt.
Earthquakes rock the Earth, unleashing massive landslides and causing sleeping volcanoes to erupt. Not even the great marine reptiles are protected. The explosion creates a tsunami a mile high and moving at nearly the speed of sound.
Massive wildfires anywhere there was vegetation, and that is so terrifying. And then the other thing that was happening too is that you heated up oceans locally so much that you disrupted ocean currents, but also you developed these hurricanes that were so severe that they'd form these huge water spouts going up into the air called hypercanes. So you'd have these massive storms.
Within days, death from the impact has encircled the Earth.
There's smoke, there's dust, blocks out the sunlight. If you're a plant, there's no photosynthesis. If you were a big animal, if you survived the initial blast somewhere on Earth, there's probably nothing to eat.
So the plant eaters die, the meat eaters die, food chains collapse.
And the world saw its fifth mass extinction.
The asteroid impact was an amazing thing because unlike all the other extinctions that preceded it, this one was global and instant.
Today, the impact still leaves a great wound in the Earth's crust. More than a 110-mile wide, 20-mile deep crater on the tip of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Discovered in 1978, it dates precisely to 65 million years ago.
We've known for a long time that we had an impact of some sort that killed the dinosaurs. What we didn't know was, well, where did that impact happen? And then the Chicxulub crater was identified and the age dates worked out that, okay, this must be it.
All over the world where Cretaceous rock is exposed, buried in that famous layer of mud lies more telltale traces of the impact.
We have more than 300 sites around the world where you can put your finger on the debris that was blown out of that asteroid impact crater.
You find a lot of soot. You find a lot of dust. You find these little beads of glass, microtectites in that layer.
Formed in an instant from the massive heat of the impact, these beads were ejected into the atmosphere before raining down around the world. Together with a spike in the trace element iridium, exceedingly rare on Earth, but abundant in asteroids, these discoveries closed the book on the mystery of Earth's most recent mass extinction. One that took out nearly 80% of all life on Earth.
You wonder, you know, with something that bad, with that much energy release, you wonder how anything survived. But 25% of life did survive.
All the pterosaurs and plesiosaurs died out, as did all of the dinosaurs, except some tiny feathered ones that weighed a pound or less.
A few species of dinosaurs survived, and we know those today as birds. If you have birds, and I have chickens at home, and you see them in certain modes of growth, like when they go from the cute chick stage into the proper chicken stage, in that middle time they look really dinosaurish, and that's because they have a common ancestor with dinosaurs.
And even smaller critters, which had been surviving under the feet of dinosaurs for as long as there had been dinosaurs. Well, now they too get their day in the sun.
From the little mouse-like creatures that existed during the age of dinosaurs, they get up one morning and the dinosaurs are all gone and the world is theirs for the taking.
The age of mammals had gone.
The yin and the yang of the planet. Life evolves, life goes extinct. And it's this whole process of evolution and extinction that has shaped the world that we have today.
66 million years after the asteroid hit, many believe mammals and all the other lucky survivors of the fifth mass extinction on Earth are now in the midst of a sixth one. A recent report from the World Wildlife Fund estimates that more than 2/3 of all animal life could be wiped out by 2020. Only this time, the cause doesn't involve asteroids, volcanoes, earthquakes, or death rains.
Oh yeah, we're absolutely in a period of extinction now. There's no question about it, because we are actively causing extinction by direct things like hunting rhinos and killing elephants and chopping down forests. And the indirect impacts, we're putting fossil fuels in the atmosphere, we're carbonizing the atmosphere, which acidifies the ocean. It's not as fast as an asteroid impact, but it's way faster than the lava flow.
So the Earth, this blue marble that we see from space, is rather a fragile place in terms of life. Because although there may be 10 million or 20 million species alive today in the world, there are billions of species in the fossil record which are extinct. So extinction is the name of the game.
And we should inform ourselves with the information about what we've learned from the past to help us ameliorate what we're doing at the present. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to live on a planet where we've actually caused a mass extinction.